What did you do to push someone over the edge? I photocopied a paperclip 100 or so times, put the pieces of paper back in the drawer, so whenever it's used, the documents have a paperclip on them. My office went nuts. Took it apart trying to find the paperclip stuck in the machine. They even called in a technician. Laughs were had. Glitter. Everyone hates glitter. I came up with this prank a few years ago. Every morning I'd take some glitter, which conveniently came in little vials, and poured some into my roommate's pants pockets while he was out of the room. Usually, I could tell by his morning routine which pants he was going to wear for the day. But even if I got it wrong, those other pants would be primed for the next time he wore them. All day, he, like everyone else on Earth, would put his hands in his pockets to get his phone, keys, or just casually, thereby transferring a little glitter to his hands. He would then touch his shirt, pants, and/or face at some point. For 2 weeks, people would tell him that he had glitter on him, but he was never able to figure out where it was coming from. After going on a rant about how confused and utterly crazed by the sudden appearance of glitter everywhere he goes he was, I came out and told him that it was me. I could have easily done this for a lot longer since he never figured out the glitter was in his pockets, though I became very liberal in the amount that I poured in. When I worked at a banquet hall in a hotel, I had a manager, who we'll call Steve, who treated everyone like crap, calling us stupid, calling us out on things not even the managers above him cared about, and just generally being a butthole. One day he put this annoying memo on the bulletin board about not eating leftover food. None of the other managers cared about this, and it actually went in the garbage if no one ate it. But instead of signing his name, he put banquet management. Well, as a joke, I scratched that out and wrote Steve. A couple of minutes later, he walked over to the bulletin board, sees this, and starts screaming, "Who wrote this?" and then runs down to his boss down the hall and starts complaining. And the guy just doesn't know what to say and shrugs. Well, the entire staff saw this and thought it was hilarious, so we start writing Steve on everything. Over the next few weeks, Steve gets more and more angry and launches an investigation, saying that he's analyzing the handwriting. At this point, he still thinks it's one person, despite the fact that the entire staff is in on the joke. He never figured it out, and I'm not sure how crazy it drove him, but he did get fired for drinking on the job. Restaurant bosses who enforce the rules that no one else cares about. If you're reading this, I want you to know that everyone hates you, and you'll be much happier and more well-liked if you just chill the F out. Sincerely, former restaurant manager. A guy at work was complaining that his spoons were slowly disappearing from the lunchroom. He had brought 6 to work and he was down to 2. Everyone else in his lab hatched this plan. Every time someone sent him an email, at the bottom, in white text, invisible unless highlighted, everyone would write spoon, 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 spoon. We all did this for several weeks, as he had a Gmail account, and that's when he started losing his mind. Every website he visited had ads for spoons and flatware. He thought Google was reading his mind. Not something that someone did to me on purpose, but one that happened nonetheless. At my old rental I had with my sister, for about a couple of months I kept hearing ringing noises, similar to an old phone ringing, every time I'd walk through the hallway, kitchen, lounge room or dining room, or also when I listened to music on the stereo in the lounge room. For months it drove me crazy. I'd be walking and hear, stop to listen, and lo and behold, nothing. I never caught on to how it stopped every time I looked for it. I thought it was a ghost, humoring myself, or that the neighbor's fricking phone kept ringing. So one day I was looking for something in the kitchen, and I looked on top of the tallest cupboard and found this mother-fricking clock. This piece of crap had one of those old-school bell and ringers on it. Vibrations from walking or stereo made it ring. For fricking months that clock drove me insane. No one believed me about the ringing. Turns out my mother bought my sister the clock and sat it on top of the cupboard, where it got pushed back where you couldn't see it. So yeah, basically, hide an item that will make an annoying noise where you can't find it. My favorite was the person that sewed someone's sleeve button a little closer every week, so the guy felt his arms were swelling. Script an alarm for 13 minutes past the hour that plays the default system error sound with no visual feedback. I would intentionally mispronounce lasagna all the time in front of my brother, pronouncing it lasagne. He'd correct me every time, then eventually gave up. Then one day he says, "You want lasagne for lunch?" To which I reply, "It's pronounced lasagna." I've never seen his eyes twitch so much. A coworker of mine used the Annoyatron on another coworker for weeks. It's a small device, like half the size of a dollar, that makes a quiet, high-pitched beep at random intervals. It has a magnet on it so you can stick it under a chair or hide it in some pretty hard-to-find locations. Sometimes he'd turn it off for a few days or a week, only to turn it back on when the victim had let his guard down. He'd move it all around the office. The guy started getting desperate after a few weeks of this. He had maintenance come in to take the thermostat apart. He looked in the ceiling tiles and air vents. The icing on the cake was when the prankster put the Annoyatron in the poor guy's car. He used to leave it unlocked during the workday. The victim thought the feds were after him. Whilst my friend and coworker took a break one day, I plugged a wireless mouse into the back of his computer. For the past 2 weeks, I occasionally jog the mouse and he's slowly being driven insane by it. I just emptied a small bag of Skittles into my dad's massive bag of M&Ms. Always a good time. One delightful day, a coworker and I switched a fridge door, which was designed with internal handles for just such a decision, from opening on the left to opening on the right. Took about 10 minutes and a Leatherman to do it. The next day, everyone came in, tried to get creamer, and we delighted in our mischief. Everyone handled it with varying degrees of aplomb, shook the fridge a bit, tried a few times, finally noticed the hinges and went to the other side. Shrugs were had and fricks were not given. The boss finally arrives, gets a cup of coffee and goes for the creamer. Grabs the door on the left and pulls. Hard. Coffee everywhere. But this guy, he knows he's right. He's always right. He's the boss. He sets down his mug, swears a little, grabs the handle again, still the left one, mind, braces his fricking leg on the counter, and pulls so fricking hard the fridge comes out of the wall about 3 feet. Everything in the fridge completely tossed about, and we, watching, eyes wide in amused horror, desperately choking back our paroxysms of laughter. Then in walks one of the salesmen, blabbing on his Bluetooth, gets coffee, opens the fridge with ease, notices that everything's messed up in the fridge, looks at the boss with a genuinely puzzled look, shrugs, gets his creamer, and wanders off. The boss swore like a sailor, stormed into his office and slammed the door, stewed a bit, and then stormed out of the office. He didn't come back for a week. I'm laughing so hard at the memory of this, it took me half an hour to type it out. Try to open a bag of chips quietly for an hour. I don't know whether the perpetrator of this rustling menace did it intentionally or not, but I can imagine being the victim of it in the workplace or while trying to read or study or something, and I can feel my blood pressure rising. In terms of a low-effort way of making someone absolutely furious, it's pretty good. Something I did to my boss. On top of the refrigerator at work is where we keep things like paper plates, paper towels, and plastic utensils. Every day I'd take one of the plastic utensils and place it in the gap at the top of the fridge that's between the freezer door and the rest of the fridge, so every time he'd opened it, the utensil would fall on the floor. After about a week of doing this, he moved the bag of utensils from the top of the fridge to the cupboard next to it, so I started putting 2 utensils in the gap. He finally got everyone together and asked that we stop putting things on the top of the fridge. So with absolutely nothing on top of the fridge now, I put a whole bunch of utensils in the gap. The next day, my boss opened the freezer and completely lost his mind. The penny trick works great. Start by leaving a penny on your friend's desk, chair, coat pocket, places where you'd expect to find a penny. Leave one a day for a while varying the locations. Then start leaving them in shoes, socks, bed, pillowcase. At first, they'll ignore the penny, but eventually it will bug them. It took my roommate 3 weeks until he stroked out one night after finding a penny embedded in his bar of soap. I highly recommend this. Drives them fricking nuts. I wanted to add, go crazy with this. His final straw was the soap, but I really wanted to start putting them in his car and get a coworker of his to play along and start leaving them around his desk. I'm upset that my plans fell short. Someone's been doing this to me at work for over a year now. Frick you! On the upside, you made almost $4. Repeat the last 2 words of their sentence. I'm currently watching Psych on Netflix, and they have a pineapple in every episode. Recently, I've noticed there aren't any more pineapples. Where are the pineapples? My ex used to do something similar to the penny trick mentioned earlier. He found a student ID of a guy with the last name Hoffer who attended our school, whom I'd never met. Instead of returning it to the guy, he began hiding it in random places for me to find, and each time I discovered it, he'd say, "You got hoffered." Then he'd take it and hide it someplace else. He hid it in my books, my pillow, under my desk, in my drawers, my clothes. He taped it to the ceiling of my shower once, and even put it in my tampon box. The hoffering went on for a while, and I began to hate Hoffer. I'd never met him before, but I loathed him for his constant presence in my life. One weekend, my roommates and I threw a large party. Who else but Hoffer made an appearance? I refused to introduce him or even talk to him. I just avoided him the entire night. My ex noticed and whispered to me that awful phrase. After I left school, I forgot about Hoffer. Then yesterday, my ex texted me a link to a page that said Hoffer was going to be a contestant on RuPaul's Drag Race, one of the shows I love, the ultimate Hoffer. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Smile all the time. Change the Internet Explorer icon to the Chrome icon. I convinced a friend to send faxes to a hated coworker's phone line. She was the receptionist and had to answer the phone when it rang. It would drive her insane. There was no way to block the calls or *69 the fax machine back. I'd often time it to happen at really inopportune moments of the day. I worked at a hotel years ago and would occasionally have the neighboring hotel send people to our hotel. Disgusting riffraff. They'd tell them that we had an insanely low nightly rate, like $35 when it was closer to $80, so the people would show up and cause a big scene about how expensive we are, then yell at us for a while and try to get me to lower the rate. After the third or fourth time of that happening, we decided to start sending faxes to the phones at the hotel's front desk. Depending on how annoying the people they sent over to us were, would determine how long and how many faxes I sent them. This isn't that creative, but it is fun. When you're talking to someone, keep looking at one specific spot on their face, like the side of their nose or something. Don't stare at it all the time, but just enough. If they ask if there's something on the face, act like you don't know what they're talking about. It doesn't take that long for them to not be able to remember what they were talking about. Mail them 3 pink ping-pong balls every day with no explanation or return address. Do this for years. Then one day send them a single green ping-pong ball and then stop. This one is fricking wild. I love it. They'll wonder what that means for the rest of their life, and they'll have containers full of pink ping-pong balls. I don't so much approve of all the plastic waste, and I imagine the postage would add up since you can't really get them in a regular envelope, but it's still awesome. Another coworker. We rolled down his back window one day during lunch and tossed broken glass on the back seat. The next day he showed up to work with it taped up. The following day after that, he took his car down to the window repair shop where the mechanic rolled the window up in front of him. I downloaded the theme to 28 Weeks Later, the really creepy instrumental tune, put it on repeat and left it in our living room, hidden but at a really low volume. My roommate would study in the room all the time, so when it was quiet, you could barely hear it. After a couple of weeks, he says the living room gives him the creeps. When you're talking to one of your friends or someone you know, always stand just a little too close or a little too far away. If you're standing too close and they back up, you back up too. And if you're standing a little too far away and they move closer, you move closer. Repeat. Watch them go slowly mad and probably try to avoid talking to you again. My sister was really passive-aggressive toward her roommate. She used to eat all of the berries out of Kellogg's Red Berries cereal, but leave a small enough amount so her roommate thought Kellogg's was just being a jerk. As a historical note, John Harvey Kellogg was a jerk. Look him up. 3 years ago, I made my wife a lasagna. Sauce from scratch, homemade spinach pasta, expensive cheese, the works. Hours invested, and the return? You should put more cheese on it like at the macaroni grill. I went out that night and brought 6 interior left-hand doors. All of our interior doors were right-handed. I cut plugs to fill the strike plate and hinge mortises, and every few weeks I change out a door or two, right hands for left, left for right. It only takes about 20 minutes now. Pull the door, plug the mortises, spackle the plug seam, chisel the plug from the opposite side, hang the opposite door and sweep up. I painted the first few times, but it's a white jam and I decided the paint smell was more suspicious than the unpainted spackle. It's a thin seam and my wife wouldn't even know where to look. She's never said anything about it, but I've seen her grasp the air where a doorknob used to be 100 times. Screw the macaroni grill. Sing the Batman theme song, na 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 na, over and over and over, but never say the Batman part. You build everyone up for it and it's just not there. If the person regularly uses a bike, just put some ball bearings inside the seat tube when they're not looking. The rattling will drive them crazy and they won't be able to work out where it's coming from. Then, a week or so later, remove the ball bearings, double the amount, cover them in grease and put them back in. The person will think the rattling has stopped only to have it slowly return worse than ever before. Repeat as desired. While walking outside in a crowded area, start looking up at the sky, shade with your hand, point upwards, and whisper something to whoever you walk with. Then take note of how many other people will spend time trying to figure out what you just saw in the sky. Buy non-brand products and replace your victim's main brands with them, while keeping them in the same main brand packaging. Everything will seem off a bit, but they'll dismiss it. Conspire with friends to send all instant messages to the target in quotation marks. It drives them crazy trying to fix the error or change a setting that doesn't exist. I used to work at my high school's library for my 7th period. All the computers in the lab had a watchdog app that would allow me to take over a computer if necessary from behind my desk at the counter. I was friends with this kid who was a bit younger and was high pretty much all the time. He walked into the lab with his class and sat down at a computer. I checked the names of all those logged in and found his, then slowly began my infiltration. I'd wait for him to look away from his screen, then write in his Word document, "Hello, Matt," next to whatever he was typing. The first time he turned back to the computer, he nearly jumped back from his seat about 10 feet. He then started asking the people next to him if they typed it, and they'd look at him like he was crazy. Then I started getting really intense. I wrote on the Word document, "Look behind you, Matt," and he quickly jumped out of his seat behind him. He asked me who I was and I said, "Who I am isn't important. It's what you've done that matters." He started legitimately freaking out, asked to go to the bathroom and left. I told him later and he was really annoyed. Every time their sports team loses, tie a red balloon to their car. Over time, the stimulus of the red balloon will become attached to the sadness of their team losing in their psyche. Then simply show them a red balloon to reduce them to tears. Aha, the Pavlovian method. There are many ways to carry this out, and all of them are manipulative and cruel. It is a fascinating thing to behold in action, however. Stealing this from the office. If you know someone that has a house phone and uses it daily, or someone at the office with one, every day get in early, take it apart and add 1 penny. Repeat this for months on end until it's a lot heavier than it used to be. Then one day take out all of the pennies and laugh as they smack themselves in the face with the phone. I once worked in an office where there was a legendary feud between 2 managers, Alex and Bill. Alex was an older guy, he was patronizing, arrogant, and had some kind of tenure. Bill was the guy who had to fix Alex's screw-ups. Here's what Bill did. He got sand from outside and sprinkled just a few grains on Alex's chair mat. This made the chair casters grind a little and his shoes slip, which was irritating. Spray a dab of really cheap and pungent cologne under Alex's desk. Alex hated perfume and would complain about it constantly. Replace the handset cord on his office phone with one that was horrendously tangled and overstretched. Gently unplug the plug to the keyboard or mouse. It looked plugged in, but wasn't. Tech support learned to hate Alex's constant calls. The file cabinets we had used a spring to close them automatically about an inch from closing. Bill broke these springs so the file cabinet would never close properly. Later, he angled the cabinet forward by shimming up the back slightly so the lower drawer would roll open at the slightest vibration, hitting Alex's chair. Putting bitters in Alex's coffee mug. That crap is hard to get the taste out of ceramic, apparently. Took Alex's legal pads and left them in some humid condition long enough to warp the pages. Unlock the locking mechanism on his office chair back so Alex thought he was falling for a second. Swapped the M and N in Alex's keyboard. Swapped the number pad keys in reverse like a touch-tone phone. Put Vaseline on the tips of the ballpoint pens. Sometimes Bill would just steal stuff out of Alex's desk or swap them with something broken. Alex has a locked office, but Bill had a key to it apparently. Bill was eventually caught and then fired because Alex set up a webcam that snapped pictures and mailed them when it sensed movement. Step 1. Become an excellent pickpocket. Step 2. Specialize in placing things into people's pockets. Step 3. Place things into their pockets while no one is watching. The best things to place are fried eggs, not runny but still a gooey consistency, and a small balloon filled with partially lukewarm water. I call this one the phantom ball bag. My neighbor is a huge fricking jerk, always being loud, yelling at his wife, the dogs, the kids, among others. Always playing his crappy garage rock, blasting it out of the garage so the whole street can hear. My payback for this is that every night I go over to their front yard and move stuff around. His crappy little garden gnomes, his crappy hose, his crappy lawnmower, and his crappy shovel. Just move all of it around a little bit every single night. Every now and again I hear, "Who keeps moving my fricking shovel around?" Haha, sucker. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.